Hi, I'm Thomas Schwingle, a professional cinematographer based in Los Angeles. In professional filmmaking, we often carry a polarizing filter in case we run into a scenario where we need to filter out reflections, glare, or scattered light. For instance, we may need to shoot through vehicle glass to see an actor's face, and it's faster to filter in front of the lens versus building a negative frame above the vehicle. With some experience, a cinematographer will know that these filters don't work at all angles. The effect can go from non-existent to subtle to dramatic, depending on where the camera is placed relative to the subject. That is because there are angles determined by physics where the filter is going to be most effective, and it is a different angle for glass, for water, for sky, and even for human skin. I've seen some incorrect information on YouTube about these angles, and I haven't seen enough good video tests to showcase best uses for a cinematographer. I considered breaking down the physics of polarization for this video, but there are already much better videos out there by scientists that delve into the physics and trigonometry of it all. You could be a filmmaker watching this and you're like, I became a filmmaker to avoid physics. I left math behind in high school. Good for you. I do care about the math and I did the recycle. It's dense. I won't get into it, but it's basically in general, the electric field sine divided by cosine with respect to the direction propagation. Both sides by n1 gives us a polarizing angle. Tangent theta p is equal to n2 over n1. So yeah, there's all that stuff. We won't get into the math and science. The key angle we care about is called Brewster's angle, which we also consider the polarization angle. This is the angle at which light creates polarized rays after impinging a boundary, which is just a fancy way of saying that light hits a surface. We see this effect of polarization when light hits a transparent medium. Some light continues into or through the medium, and some is reflected. So glass, water, sky, and yes, even human skin or hair can create polarized light. Skin is made up of water, oil, cells, so it can be considered a transparent medium. Metal doesn't create polarized light, so we cannot use a filter for metallic surfaces. Oh, but what about cars? YouTube photographers talk about making cars look better with a polarizer. Most cars have a layer of gloss paint over the metal, and that does refract light. So we're actually controlling reflections off of the gloss paint. Each type of surface has its own mathematical angle where light is polarized and where a polarizing filter will have the greatest effect of removing glare. Let's talk about glass first. Window glass is typically considered as having a polarization angle of 57 degrees. That 57 degrees is a measurement from the perpendicular to the surface due to the equations and the science behind finding that angle. Using math, that means if we want to find the angle relative to the surface, we have to take 90 degrees, subtract the Brewster's angle, and then you are left with the angle away from the surface. I mention this because in my physical test I used a protractor. Those are typically a half circle, 180 degrees, and since I used it for marking the floor, I needed to give markings relative to the surface. I also mention this in case you decide to use a protractor for any critical reflection calculations in your own work. For this test, I made a simple shadow box using a picture frame and extending it deeper with some foam core. We start at 90 degrees from the surface. We can tell we hit the 90 degree mark because we see ourselves in the reflection. You can see my reflection rotating the polarizing filter, and we aren't really getting any effect on the glass. Then, let's move over to about 75 degrees, and we can start to see some minimal effects of the polarizing filter as I rotate it. Next, let's move over to 45 degrees, and we can see that the effect gets a little stronger. Now, let's move over to about 33 degrees. Or the Brewster's angle of 57 degrees from the perpendicular to the surface. And you can see the polarizer is working at maximum effect. You can see the white glare of the cyc wall diminish or increase as I rotate the polarizing filter. This is allowing us to see into the shadow box as the polarized light is removed by the filter. And finally, let's shift over to 20 degrees, which is a pretty steep angle to the glass, and the effect of the polarizing filter starts to wane. Now, in your next art film, are you going to whip out the protractor and walk up to the window and find the perfect angle so you can see the sad woman crying behind the glass? Maybe, maybe not. Maybe the composition of the scene actually looks better with the camera placed somewhere else. However, if you are going to use a protractor on set, please comment below. We are fortunate that car windshields are generally sloped in such a way that if you need to look inside to see the actors seated in the vehicle, A camera mounted to the hood generally lands close to Brewster's angle, and so polarizers are a great tool for reducing glare in this scenario. Boxy trucks or windshields with a heavy curve are going to make this less effective. Let's say you have a project coming up with a critical scene, and you know the vehicle you are going to be using. You can prepare the camera angle ahead of time, especially if grip hardware is going to be difficult to use, say driving on a freeway at 60 miles an hour. So bring that protractor to the Scout. Let's talk about water. Water has a Brewster angle of 53 degrees, which isn't too far off from window glass. The angle relative to the surface of the water would be 37 degrees for those of you who don't do math. Here's another test using a plastic dish filled with water. We're going to remove glare from this still water. And the key word is still. Ripples will change things because the surface is no longer flat. I stuck some bright tape to the set wall, and it's within the reflection, and so if I place my camera at 37 degrees to the water surface, I can remove the glare and see into the dish. It isn't as common to have to shoot into water, but if you have a pool scene with characters underwater, you have puddles on the ground, you have a monster in a lake, it's good to know. And water is always going to make measuring the angle easy on you because its surface is always in the same place, flat, in line with the Earth.
Thanks, gravity.
Let's talk about skin. Skin also has a Brewster's angle. It's not a precise number because we all have varying amounts of water, fat, and oil in our bodies, but there is a generally accepted angle. For this test, I acquired a flat piece of skin for us to test the glare and polarization angle. No, I'm just kidding. Skin generally has a Brewster's angle very close to water, about 54 degrees, and hair is closer to glass, about 57 degrees. Here's our beautiful model on a stage. Notice the reflections in her hair and on her face. As I rotate the polarizer, all of these fluctuate and change. If we move over to a profile angle, we can see how dramatically it can affect the appearance of the face. So here's the thing about skin. It isn't flat. I mean, even if I had gone to great lengths to acquire a piece of skin through questionable means, a simple flat rectangle doesn't represent the complexity of the face and the volume found in hair. A polarizer can be a great tool to make the skin look a little more rich or less glossy, especially in a featured close-up. If you're doing a tracking shot of a person while the camera wears a polarizer, the effects could change. If the body and camera are both moving, different parts of the skin and hair might fluctuate in their reflectivity, which, depending on the scene, could be a negative. The human body has curve and shape, so you're not going to be able to reliably predict the angle of polarization like you would with water or glass. Whoa, put away that protractor, you're freaking out the model. So you'll have to dial in these creative choices for a face to taste. Finally, let's consider a scene that combines multiple elements. A character stands outside a car, and inside the car, behind the windshield glass, is another character. If you mount the polarizer to remove the reflection from the car windshield, are you okay with the effect it's going to have on the actor standing outside the car? Sometimes we like the reflections that hair gives. If you're shooting a shampoo commercial, you probably don't want to polarize. The client's not going to like that. Thank you for watching this little video about polarizers for cinematography. If you like this video, please hit the like button and subscribe if you want. I will continue to make these scientifically influenced videos about cinematography to help enhance the craft as I find topics of interest and as I have time between work. Thank you so much for watching.